First-ranking Captain Vladimir Prikodko, director of a public research organization for underwater studies, noted that Russia, the United States and China are spending billions in space, when they may have to spend money here, down in the depths of sea, beneath the shining polar ice caps, tinged with blue, where, he says, gigantic extraterrestrial machines hide. For decades the Russian army has tracked down UFOs and extraterrestrials coming and going from the top and bottom of the world. The foundations that boast the world powers and the technology and machinery used with which they count are sometimes little less than magic. Captain Prikodko recounts the astounding case of Dr. Rubens Vilela, a famous explorer of the Arctic who, together with an officer of the guard and an experienced helmsman, witnessed the departure of a silver object facing the sky from the bottom of the sea covered by ice. The men sailed aboard a huge Russian icebreaker during a naval operation called Deep Freeze, which undertook an intense naval exercise in the northern polar region. According to the later testimony at an official hearing, Dr. DZH. Vilela and the two crewmen on deck along with him were startled because of the object that appeared from under the ice. Something came out of the water that cracked the solid ice about 3 meters wide, and a huge silver object disappeared into the sky. Huge blocks of ice were lifted into the air tens of meters high, the crash hit the ice mounds and the water formed huge bubbles. Steam rose from it. This seems to indicate a gigantic energy potential that had just been released. Antarctica also has its extraterrestrial presence. In 1997, says Prikodko, the Bellingshausen Depression alongside the Antarctic area was examined by the Australian Army. At a depth of 6 kilometers his camera captured oval objects, emitting an intense inner light. The film was examined by experts from the Royal Institute of Oceanology. The conclusion was unequivocal: these structures can only be of artificial origin. Russian Navy tracks submerged symbols. Russian naval UFO data presented by former USSR Captain Vladimir Azaza and former Vice President and head of the Exploration Section of the Academy of Sciences Oceanographic Commission states that approximately 50% of encounters with UFOs are connected with the oceans. 15% with lakes. So UFOs explicitly target the water element. Therefore the collection of naval data on UFOs is of special value. Captain Prikodko adds that during another Russian naval exercise, the sonar, acoustic report, put the officers on a dead end. Because the unidentified object, the metered device, was underwater moving at a speed of 150 knots. About 280 kilometers per hour. This cannot be because the modern submerged submarine cannot reach speeds above 45 knots. The surveillance officer immediately informed the captain, who, in turn, immediately contacted a command ship. Imagine his surprise when he learned that all the other ships, almost close to each other, informed the aircraft carrier the same. The mysteries in the depths of the oceans are as great as in outer space, Captain Prikodko said. The problem is, humanity rushes up with great interest and is not too intense down. Maybe this is a big mistake, he said sadly. The Nazis and the United States in the polls. One of the many conspiranoic histories that abound in the web, is one that says that the Nazi military power was not completely extinguished after World War II, but they were kept hidden in secret bases constructed in Antarctica. Those who believe in this idea assert that the United States sent a lightning military operation to the White Continent to end the last stronghold of the Third Reich. According to some blogs of enigmas, the interrogation by the Allies of the crew of the German ships U-530 and U-977, in 1945, revealed that the Germans had developed enormous underground complexes in the Antarctic for the manufacture of aircraft and other weapons of advanced technology. 2 years later, the Americans would have launched a grand plan to hunt the fugitives. It was called Operation High Jump, although officially this project figures as the largest scientific military exploration of the Antarctic territories that laid the foundations for international bases. High Jump was led by Admiral Richard Byrd and a crew of more than 4,700 men with 33 aircraft, on 13 ships including the Northwind Coast Guard icebreaker, an aircraft carrier, USS Philippine Sea, and a submarine, USS Senate. At first, it had been estimated that the duration of the project to find suitable areas to build scientific bases would be 8 months, but the curious thing is that everything ended 8 weeks after the start of the expedition. Some conspiracists claim that the camps were attacked by a powerful and unknown enemy that forced them to return home much earlier than expected. Subsequently, back in Washington, Admiral Byrd was summoned by an investigative commission of the United States Senate. He said that in the course of another war, America can be attacked by an enemy who has the ability to fly from pole to pole at incredible speed. North Pole, May 18, 1987. NORTH Pole, May 18, 1987. Richard Evelyn Byrd. 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 Byrd's expedition from 1928 to the South Pole was carefully prepared and provided with great means. The base camp, on the northern tip of Roosevelt Island in the Ross Sea, had laboratories, workshops, warehouses, a radio station and a hospital. At this base, called Little America, lived 42 months 42 men. From there Byrd left by plane to make the return to the South Pole that flew on 29 of November of 1929. Its pilot in that flight was Bernd Balchen. He discovered the land called Mary Byrd Land and important mountain ranges and explored the land of Edward VII. On the evidence of great value, spent the winter of 1934 alone in a cabin almost 200 km from Little America. In order to obtain data with the success of Byrd, he organized 3 other expeditions between 1939 and 1955, in which he also used aircraft, helicopters, and submarines, allowing him to become better acquainted with Antarctica and establishing its continentality. He organized Operation High Jump, whose official denomination was the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program, 1946-47, or Program of Antarctic Developments of the United States Navy. It was a series of military maneuvers intended to test military equipment and troops in Antarctic conditions. These maneuvers would have continuity with Operation Windmill, 1947 to 1948, and Operation Deep Freeze, 1955 to 1956. He died on March 11, 1957 in Boston while he slept. He was preparing another expedition for the International Geophysical Year 1957 to 58. Auteurs have speculated on the figure of Byrd, relating it to the theory of the hollow earth. They say that in one of his flights he discovered an entrance to the intraterrestrial world. The finding would not have come to light because the United States Army UU would have silenced Byrd, although the airman's statements about his explorations would offer clues, always according to these authors, although Byrd said that everything he wrote in his diary was entirely real. After decades of aerial and terrestrial explorations, innumerable exhibitions of satellite photographs of very different nations, with very different interests in the region, no indications have been found that such a theory is true. Byrd in the North Pole. Byrd in the North Pole. Base of Byrd. Base of Byrd. Missiona Secrets. Base the United States in North Pole. Base the United States in North Pole. The main group, magnetic and photographic aerial reconnaissance, operates from a continental runway built to launch DC-3 type aircraft adapted for long-range airfoil survey flights. At the end of this year, most of the coastlines and areas of the sector are relieved. The takeoff of twin-engine DC-4 type aircraft from the aircraft carrier requires unprecedented solutions. During the campaign are used successfully devices called JATO as thrust rockets on the train. The vast aerial resources deployed in the operation allow a survey in only 2 weeks of more than 500,000 square kilometers through the taking of 70,000 aerial photographs. The exploration includes a close recognition of the area. The astonishing dry valleys near the Ross Ice Barrier, originally discovered by Robert Scott in 1903. On February 19, 1947, Byrd himself flies once more towards the South Pole and further onto new lands unknown. His cryptic and singular testimony about this mission, which in a fragmentary form reproduces the press, is initially ignored, although it will continue to feed a kind of legend about enigmas existing in the polar latitudes, which added to the inaccessibility relative to them part of non-military or scientific sources will make them endure. The results of the exploration at the end of the campaign, which will be restarted a year later, will serve to impose the United States presence in a region. It is a potentially conflictive issue due to territorial demands of several countries. The essentially military mission has dismissed the participation of foreign observers and has had the support of a limited number of specialized scientists, which emphasizes its predominantly military nature. The magnitude of the naval effort added to transcend some of the true objectives of the mission, will be a reason for speculation even decades later on their true purposes. One of the most fun scientific stories that run through the internet is the one that affirms that the Earth is hollow, yes, as you read it, and that at the poles there are holes through which you can access the interior. There seems to be a rich underworld that the authorities want to hide. In recent days, the United States had classified the secret images of the Arctic, which for military reasons has hidden the scientists and the rest of the inhabitants of the planet. For a whole decade, a battery of spy satellites of the North American government has been fulfilling a very special mission, to obtain images in high resolution of the two terrestrial poles. The material, classified as secret, has so far only been seen and used by a small and select group of scientists from the United States Geological Survey, and only after signing a confidentiality agreement that specifically prohibited them from exposing images. However, within hours of a National Academy of Sciences committee recommending its publication, the United States Interior Department decided to declassify more than 1,000 images of the Arctic in order to help scientists to study the impact of climate change. The new photographs represent an impressive improvement in the quality and detail of what can be seen in them. It is enough to point out that the standard resolution of the images of the Landsat program, with which most of the scientists studying the Arctic work, is 15 meters, while the declassified material reaches resolutions of 1 meter. Images, taken continuously for nearly a decade, show details of 6 different locations of the Arctic Ocean. With this information in hand, the scientific community will now be able to make far more detailed models of the health status of polar ice and the rate at which they are melting as a result of climate change. I am shocked, he says. Torsten Marcus, one of the authors of the report of the National Science Association that asked the government to declassify the secret material. Normally, you make a recommendation and nothing happens for months. This time it's really weird.